Hi there, welcome back to my channel. I'm the Uruguayan Polyglot and I create content about language learning. In one of my previous videos I said that one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made when it comes to language learning was not switching to one-to-one lessons earlier. In today's video and in the following one I'm going to be exploring this topic more in depth. I'll structure my thoughts as follows. Firstly, I will describe what are to me the most relevant drawbacks of group sessions, then I'll address its advantages in order to be fair, and I'll leave some price considerations and the conclusion for the upcoming episode. Although I am now a big fan of private tuition, I did actually spend most of my language learning journey attending group lessons composed by between 5 to 15 people. But at some point I noticed that the larger the group I was in, the less I liked the experience. Makes sense, right? The more individual attention I could get, the more I felt I was making the most out of the class. So I once decided to attend a German crash course in couples just with a friend of mine to see how it went. Given that the experience was very positive, I decided to go one step further and try out one-to-one lessons on an online platform. Since then, I've always used that website for finding tutors and have never attended group classes again. In case you're wondering, the name of the website starts with an I and ends with an I, but since they are not sponsoring this channel yet, I'll not reveal their name. Although I guess it must be kind of obvious now. Let's now argue in detail why I regard individual tuition as superior. To this end, today I'll lay out what are to me the biggest pros and cons of group lessons, starting with the latter. The first drawback I'd like to draw your attention to is that you barely practice speaking in the classroom. One of the goals I guess most of us share when learning a foreign language is to be able to speak it. We dream of being surrounded by native speakers and naturally interacting with them. But to achieve that level, you need to speak a lot. But if you're in a group lesson, probably say 97% of the talking has been done by the teacher. And from the remaining 3%, you might have done, say, 20% of the talking or even less. On top of that, if you get the chance to speak, it will probably be to answer a question posed by the instructor. That is certainly no conversation practice whatsoever. Or what's more, you might be grouped with other students to have conversations with them. This happened to me when I was learning German at the Goethe Institute. Since the class had around 15 people and was thus kind of large, the teacher would usually divide us in groups of between 3 and 4 people, and each group would be given a topic to discuss for around 5 to 10 minutes. As you can imagine, the teacher would barely have time to monitor all the groups. So basically, when you had the chance to speak, the only ones that were there to correct you were the students you happened to share the group with. I deemed this to be quite a waste of time. For A, the other students would probably be unable to identify most of the mistakes that the speaking member was making, and B, even if someone in the group happened to notice an error, it was highly unlikely that they would dare to correct it, because it was not clear that they would have built enough rapport with the person that was speaking to interrupt him or her and point at the mistake. That is, either way, the very few speaking practices that you can do in group sessions are inefficient, to say the least. The second point I want to touch upon is that you barely have an influence on how the lessons are conducted. There will always be an established schedule. For instance, week 1, lesson 1, week 2, read article and finish lesson 1, week 3, mock test and start lesson 2, etc. If you'd rather put the emphasis of the lesson on the reading or the listening comprehension, then you'd rather do it at home. Also, you can't change the starting and ending times of the class. This might be a big drawback if you're someone such as a pilot, an actor, or a magician. That is, someone who does not have a 9-to-5 job, but rather an unstable schedule. In those instances, you're unlikely to commit to having lessons, say, on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 6 to 8 p.m. Or if you do, you know that you're going to miss some sessions every once in a while. This can also be far from ideal if you want to go to the Bahamas and chill there for 3 weeks in the middle of March, even if you have a 9-to-5 job. Additionally, you can't influence the learning speed. Let's say your company has assigned you to a position in another country, such as the Netherlands. You want to go there in 3 months and want to master the basics of Dutch first. Or you were just told at uni that you need to get your Cambridge Advanced exam done within the next month if you want to go on exchange to the UK. In either case, good luck trying to find a group course tailored to your specific needs that starts at that moment in time you find yourself at. But not only are you unable to influence the learning speed of the classroom, you might very well find yourself in the situation where others are slowing you down. There will invariably be a range of different people in a classroom with their corresponding different abilities. Some of them might be 50 years old, some others just 20. Some might already speak several languages, whereas others might be learning a foreign language for the first time. Some might have studied psychology at university, some others might have done physics. All this implies that the language learning abilities in the class are going to be diverse. Some people are going to to get it quicker than others. And if you happen to find yourself on the quicker end, which was my case, then you'll sometimes have the feeling that the pace of the lesson is too slow. I guess I have so far made a solid case against group lessons, but in order to make a comprehensive evaluation, I deem it necessary to highlight the positive aspects that group sessions have. The first one I'd like to highlight is that the likelihood of finding a good teacher is higher. If you attend a language school, you can be assured that the tutor is going to be decent. He or she must certainly have obtained some sort of certificate in order to be there. Or even if that is not the case, the language school's reputation is at stake, which means that if they want to stay in business, they have to choose the instructors very carefully. If you attend online classes, though, you're more likely to run into bad teachers. Some of them might not even have studied to become language tutors. This does not necessarily imply that they will be bad, but it certainly makes you much more likely to run into tutors that are not up to scratch. The second point I want to mention is related to the lack of flexibility I mentioned before. I have already explained why this is a big drawback, but it is fair to point out that this rigidity might have its positive effects as well. The main one to me is that you're forced to stay on schedule. The flexibility of online classes can be a disadvantage if you learn at a rate that is slower than the rate that you would have in a group session. In that scenario, group lessons would push you to study more and would help you reach a higher level in a shorter time span. Also, in the classroom, you'll follow a defined roadmap that has been tested out for many years. Several teachers have revised the course content after using it repeatedly with many hundreds of students. Thus, you can be quite sure that if you stick to it, you're going to reach the language level you were aiming at. With online lessons, though, you might encounter teachers that do not have a plan at all. Or if they have one, or if they prepare one that suits your needs, it is less likely to be as bulletproof as the one offered by language academies. The final advantage I see in group lessons is its social component. Attending a group course necessarily implies that you're going to meet people with similar interests. This is important for several reasons. For instance, it might motivate you to go to class. If you happen to bond with some people of the courses, you're more likely to find the sessions enjoyable, which makes you more likely to keep it up with your learning. Also, you're more likely to engage in extracurricular activities with other students. If you're learning French, for instance, you're likely to hear someone saying that they're gonna watch the newly released French movie, and thus you're likely to join. Finally, group sessions introduce peer pressure. This might not be an advantage for some of you, but it would certainly be the case for me. If I know that I have to prepare a presentation and present it in front of 10 people, I'm going to prepare way better than if I had to present in front of my online teacher. So that was it for today. In the next episode, I'll factor in the price differences that you might encounter and then draw a conclusion explaining why I prefer online classes. See you there.